property management is a really interesting industry because, at a minimum, you've generally got two customers, right? You've got tenants and you've got owners. Now, whether you're the owner or, in our case, we do third-party management as well as manage, the assets that I have some ownership in. But you do find that dichotomy, you have two people with sort of opposing views, and how do you marry those two in the middle? How do you take good care of an asset while charging as much, getting somebody else to pay as much as possible, and trying to have somebody else that wants to spend as little as possible, right? Both people want to spend less. And,
yeah, it's actually fascinating when you put it like that, because it's like you're selling the same product to two different customers. It's like selling a supercar to a guy who wants a fast car and also to a person who just wants a car. And it has to somehow marry the two. And it's like, I don't know, when a lot of times what ends up happening is you have to make judgment calls that favors one or the other. And usually it's in the favor of the owner. I would say if you're a third property manager, like at the end of the day, they're the ones that are really writing the checks. And so if you have to choose who to please, it's probably that one. But that's a long-term failing strategy, because really the more important customer is the one that's actually paying the rent, like keeping them in the building and like maintaining occupancy and, high efficiency. That's really the key that wins the game.
Yeah. And so, for us, we found that finding the type of owner that is going to want to have the asset of the quality that allows us to keep a tenant in there for many years is kind of a way to bridge that gap, right? We don't want the owner that says, I don't want to spend any money. I want my CapEx budget as small as possible. I want to, keep repairs and maintenance to only a livable condition, right? We don't want that. We want the owner that says, yes, let's take this up from a, C to a C plus, or a C plus to a B minus, right? Let's take this property up a grade and operate it more efficiently so that the tenants want to stay in there. And that, finding and striking that balance, it is a trick. And with those opposing viewpoints, yes, we do. Long term, the tenant is an important part. They're not a commodity that's replaceable, because at some point, you could theoretically run out of tenants, but you don't want to get a reputation for being the type of property manager that just chews through tenants, because then, frankly, the owner gets upset because they're having all the releasing costs as well that are starting to drive up. So.
Yeah, this reminds me of Naval Ravikant, who's an angel investor out of Silicon Valley. He has a quote, which is play long-term games with long-term people. And you always need to take the long view, whether you're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with owners, like whoever, like be in a relationship with people who can see the long horizon, that aren't just in it for the quick transaction. Because like you're saying, there is tenant turnover is one of the biggest expenses. And too often owners, they come in, they have their eyes on the revenue side of the equation, say, let's drive the revenue and let's just, worry about that. And that's the big thing. But what that ends up doing then is it drives, up your vacancy rates as you're turning these tenants, you're getting in there and you're doing the renovations. And so your budget's expanding. And for me, one of the most impactful business lessons I've ever learned is that, a dollar saved is better than a dollar earned, because a dollar earned is always on a margin. So if you're running on a 50% margin, $1 of added revenue is only worth 50 cents to your bottom line. Whereas if you can go in there and decrease expenses by $1, that's a full dollar back in your pocket. And the easiest way to cut expenses then is to keep tenants so that you don't have unit turn costs. And the way that you do that is by serving them exceptionally.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's where it comes on, us as the property managers to serve them exceptionally. And what does that look like in our eyes and in the eyes of the tenants to have them served exceptionally, right? What are we doing besides providing, responsiveness for maintenance, making sure that they don't have a property that's unsafe or uninhabitable, right? Is meeting, their needs within reason to make sure that they've got a decent property and they're satisfied with where they're living.